So here in African American Studies, we learn that the core of who we are as African people is strongest when we're together, and that our bond and our physical presence has empowered us for millennia. And it is our connection to each other and the energy and the vibration of the universe that connects us to our ancestors and to the 7 generations that will come after us. You see, we're a continuum of a great and mighty purpose in humanity, living in balance with each other and with the nature around us. We are a continuum, not an ending. So today, while I talk a little bit about the legacy of Black History Month, I'm going to share with you, to take with you, to contemplate this month, is the importance of understanding time, space, and pattern. And it's an understanding of where we are right now means knowing where we came from and how far we have traveled to get here and where we're heading in these coming months and years and decades. So I am going to, because I'm a teacher, that means I always have something to share with you, a PowerPoint. I'm going to try and test my DJ skills here. So we're going to start a little bit with the legacy of Black History Month, celebrating the history and culture of African American people. So what is Black History Month? What is this all about? Dr. Goldsmith did a wonderful introduction talking about Carter G. Woodson, who's known as the father of Black history. So in 1915, Carter G. Woodson and his friends established the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. A year later, the Journal of Negro History began a quarterly publication. So it was in 1926 when Woodson proposed and launched an annual February observance of Negro History Week, which then became Black History Month in 1976. It is said that the observance in February is because February 12th is Abraham Lincoln's birthday, and February 14th is the accepted birthday of Frederick Douglass, giving us 2 reasons to celebrate in this month of February. So that's a brief history of how this event got started and where we are. We'll talk about where we are today. They actually didn't give me a time of how long I had to talk, but I will keep it short. But like my mentor, Mr. Sawazi, said, when I have the opportunity to teach, I will take this opportunity to teach and hope that you take something of value with you today to carry with you for the month and for this, what is going to be a different year, absolutely, for us here in the United States of America and in the world this year of 2021. So what I want to talk to you real briefly about, and if you have a piece of paper, especially if you're one of my students here for extra credit today, some of these ideas of understanding the value of history and of a chronological timeline. So history serves 3 functions, yeah? It records the past, it provides context for the present, and it advises about your future. So knowing where you have been helps to inform of where you are right now in this time, in this space, and this pattern. And knowing where you come from to get to where you are now helps you plan for in the future. And these are the functions of history. So in history, as a historian, what I like to talk about is the value of a chronological timeline. So that means that you have a definitive kind of start point. It provides context for the time, space, and pattern on that point. And it also provides some historical context for perspective. So I'm talking about that today because when I conclude, I'm going to show you some history of our country and some of our demonstrating our resiliency in different times of uncertainty and adversity in this country. And I hope that you take with you today the understanding that this is not a new place that we find ourselves in this country, that we have been through this pattern before in different times and different spaces. And there have been answers before, and the answers lie here in understanding our history. So I tell my students, when you take a class in college, you should get at least 1 college level word that you can use with your family and your friends to let them know that you are, in fact, a college student. And the word that I have for you today is historiography. And that word historiography means the way in which history is studied. And so as we look at the history of Black History Month and the significance that African Americans and Black folks have played in this country for the last 400 years that we've occupied this piece of the continent, we have some questions when we think about what it means to be Black in this country, what it has meant, and what it can mean in the future. So going forward, when you think about your identity and your space in this time and the patterns that we are seeing unfolded, you find yourself reflecting on who told you who you are, who told you what you are, and why are you here? So as we reflect on the history of African Americans, of Black people, of people of color in this country, what has that experience has been that has defined and in many ways confined who we have been in this country? So those are some things that we can reflect on as we go through this. What I would like to share with you, though, is how we have come to where we are here at Fresno City College. So recently, there's been some new legislation passed here in this country, and it is called Assembly Bill 1460 that will require ethnic studies, now is required for anyone to graduate from college. So this has been a very long struggle. I'm not going to read what's on the screen to you. I'll give you an opportunity to read that over. But I will let you know that we are here at Fresno City College, one of the oldest ethnic studies, African American, Black studies programs that exist in this state. And we're very proud of that. I have to make sure I'm on the right screen. We have seen an evolution since the 1970s in how we study the Black experience in the United States of America. What began as Black studies in the late 1960s and through the 70s evolved in the 1980s to be more inclusive. This idea of cultural or ethnic studies was designated as a kind of catch-all for non-European centered studies. So we mean African American studies, Chicano Latino studies, Native American studies, and Asian American studies are our four traditional ethnic studies programs in the state of California. In the 90s, as part of a renaissance and returning to that African root, which is a dedicated part of African history, and especially this experience that Africans are having in the United States of America, this idea of Sankofa, to go back and fetch it, to go back to what we did well and find out what was our strength so that we can repeat that in a different time, in a different space, but following that same pattern. So this renaissance, this going back to to the African roots of the African American experience in the 1990s, grew to include that title of African in our studies. And then finally, our latest evolution in the early 2000s is this idea of Africana studies, where the emphasis is not just on the African American experience, but bringing in the experience of our African diaspora, as well as keeping current with the issues that are facing the continent of Africa today as these emerging economies come out of the shadows of colonialism. So I know that was a lot of information to throw at you really quick. I really only have a little bit of time. And like Mr. Sawalzi says, there he is right there. Whenever I get an opportunity to teach and share with you, I'm going to take that opportunity and throw as much information as I can at you. Mr. Sawalzi, I cannot say anything without giving honor to our Sheikh, our honored teacher, Kayinde Sawalzi, who started this program at African American Studies and taught for 45 years in this program. Last semester was his last semester teaching part-time. And I know that he is watching us today or listening to us today. And I want to make sure that we always honor the founder of what we do here at Fresno City College, Kayinde Sawalzi. So I'm going to go through real quick just some of the high points of how the African influence and the Black influence has shaped how we see our country today. I'll give you some examples of some art and how it's come, music and how it's been developed. And then I want to share a video with you and not take up too much more of our time. If you are interested, then I encourage you to go to our open courses. We have African American Studies classes that are starting in March. We would love to share this with you. Myself, Professor Auguste Quadillo, Professor Rhonda Kelly, and Professor Dubai Tadasi are happy to bring you into our courses and share this information with you this semester and every semester going forward. So very quickly, when we talk about music, jazz music is the very first original form of American music. It is a combination of different elements and impressional or interpretations of music that both came from Africa and that was imported from other areas. So usually in class, we'll play some excellent music by Duke Ellington, some of my favorite music by Cab Calloway and Louis Armstrong. I encourage you to come take our African American Studies 15 African American music to learn how we came from Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, and Cab Calloway to Run DMC, Salt and Pepper, Erykah Badu, and Arrested Development. Music has ever been a form of creative resistance by African people in this country. So African American Studies 15 is the class you want to catch up on if you're interested in our music. When we talk about African American art, the art of the Harlem Renaissance is some of the most iconic art to come out of American history, and I'll go through and share just a few of them with you. This piece from 1934, Aspects of Negro Life, is an incredible piece that traces both the history, the good and the bad of the history of the African and Black experience here in the United States of America, from the earliest beginnings in times of servitude to the great productions of political movements, of literature, of music, and of course of art. I'll go real quickly. This is my favorite artist and Mr. Sawalzi's favorite artist, Archibald Motley, who created these beautiful representations of African-American life in New York during a time where a lot of the images that were coming out were pretty negative. And then finally, some of the most authentic art expressing that transitional time between recognition as full citizenship and full humans and that fight against the oppressive near century of Jim Crow. We have both the thankful poor and probably what you have or someone in your family has hanging a print in their house of the banjo lesson. And again, if you're interested in the art aspects of the African American experience, I encourage you to join our African American Studies 3 class. That's African American art, where we look at the development from this expressive art from the Harlem Renaissance to our Black arts movement of the 70s and 80s. So I will tell you, it is a very rich culture. The amount of African influence in American culture is a long untold story. And with this new legislation, we are hoping that this story does become part of our story here in the United States of America. Wow. So if I am not overdoing it with my time, it said that took me 11 minutes. I have a very short video that I would like to share with you from a song that you may recognize, made popular by Donny Hathaway. This version is sung by Alicia Keys. I hope that you enjoy this video. I'm going to give it a shot. I hope it works. Thank you all for giving me this time. Our resiliency is strong. We have endured much more than this. So thank you. Thank you for joining us today.